We have wintered long enough. Never have these oft-used words from Jane Jepka rung so true. We have wintered long enough indeed. Though this certainly wasn't the hardest of winters in terms of weather, this winter, now officially and finally past, has been a test of our endurance on so many levels. If there has ever been a winter of our discontent, I suspect for many of us this was it. We in Toronto, of course, have been in some form of lockdown now for almost 5 months, to say nothing of the past year as we have watched the virus take its toll on people's lives and their livelihoods. And just as so many of us were starting to sense the possible winding down of the pandemic, glimpsing the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel, we find ourselves in lockdown again, as we contend now with a third and very worrying wave of cases. Which means that we are not quite yet out of the woods, and which means that we must draw on our reserves of patience and fortitude and all that we know of resilience to get through these coming weeks to what will, hopefully, be the summer for which our hearts so desperately long. Yet while we maintain this necessary vigil for the well-being of our neighbors and ourselves, springtime is beginning to unfold all around us, keeping its own calendar on a schedule dictated solely by the sun and the gentle tilt of the earth. Admittedly, there's something a bit jarring in seeing crocuses and snowdrops begin to bloom, and green shoots slowly emerge from the soil and from branches that for months have looked all but dead. Does Mother Nature not know that we're still in a pandemic? Doesn't she care or understand our predicament? What are we to make of spring with all of its extravagance in this strange season of our lives? Would not the drab colors and cold of mud season suit us better for these times? Claire Loden, in her new collection of essays, In the Garden, describes how her relationship to nature has changed during the pandemic. This year, she says, I think I mostly noticed nature itself not noticing us, just getting on with the business of burgeoning, naturally not giving a flip that one of its myriad species is sick. While such seeming indifference from the natural world may come across as a bit harsh, I choose to see it another way. I choose to accept myself as just another part of the wondrous web of creation, and to see in spring's relentless, riotous unfolding the very deepest of affirmations that life goes on. That truly life goes on with or without us, in sickness and in health, when we are at our breaking point or when we're riding high. That always and everywhere, spring follows winter and life itself goes on. And that blessedly, after the longest night, joy often does come in the morning, even if it's slow to arrive. That is a truth we've come to know, if ever we have had to pick up the pieces of our broken heart and begin again. If we've ever had to work our way through a loss, waiting in the weight of grief to find our way to the other side. If we've ever had to overcome the black dog of depression to make our way back to the light. The great truth taught by this season and celebrated at Easter is that life goes on, and often on our most difficult days, it has the grace to carry us along with it. This is a lesson I have learned time and again, just as someone has died. I can't count the times I've been gathered with people in a hospital room around the bed of one they love who has just breathed their last. So often, through the tears and waves of deep sadness, there are also, before long, in that same room, meaningful and unexpected moments of laughter, heartfelt chuckles at their loved one's most endearing quirks. And in all of it, an unspoken acknowledgement that the person now gone will somehow live on in those who remain. It is a moment when those gathered there in grief begin to learn that the life that is within them too will go on as well. At times, people feel unsettled by this experience. They worry that they're somehow disrespecting the deceased, thinking that love can only be shown in such moments by their despair. But this Easter morning, the blossoms and buds outside serve to remind us that this is not so. The great cycles that play out in the world around us remind us that there is a season for everything, but that life also and always goes on. These lessons from the natural world are echoed, I believe, in the springtime stories of the Jewish Passover and the Christian Easter. The Israelites move from captivity to freedom, speaks to that impulse to breathe in the sweet air of liberation after enduring terrible hardship. And the resilience of Jesus' first followers in the wake of his death speaks to how an entire community can be resurrected from its devastation in powerful and lasting ways. But a bedrock belief that life goes on is not necessarily a given. Such a belief can easily be challenged by the hard facts of everyday life, filling us with deep doubts about where life is headed, especially when the future before us seems at best to be a blur. This is where faith and hope come in, terms that I see being fairly close in meaning when defined as our deepest trust or our deepest confidence in something. Choose whichever word works best for you, or feel free to simply replace faith or hope with the words trust or confidence if helpful. After all, translating theological words is a vital skill to develop as a Unitarian. But by whatever name you call it, I commend to you as a spiritual practice the development of this capacity to trust, to hold on to faith or hope or deep confidence, that you might in every circumstance, come what may, be able to lean into the abiding truth that life goes on. Václav Havel, the playwright and human rights activist who led the resistance against repression in his native Czechoslovakia, and who, after being in and out of prison for several years, went on to become the president of the Czech Republic, lived out his final years with lung cancer. This reflection of his on the meaning of hope is worth taking in. Hope, he said, is a state of mind, not a state of the world. Either we have hope within us or we don't. Hope is not a prognostication. It is an orientation of the spirit. You can't delegate that to anyone else. Hope is definitely not, he says, the same as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. It is hope above all that gives us strength to live and to continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. I hear in his description of hope something of the faith of the crocus from that poem by Lynn Unger that Lynn read a moment ago. The feeling that something makes sense no matter how it turns out. Living in the violence of spring, living in a time where shells are cracking and shapes alter, who can afford to risk forgetting the danger, forgetting the moment the crocus bulb breaks ground, never knowing whether snow or sun or ice awaits in warm or jagged welcome? We cannot always control the conditions in which we live. And sometimes when circumstances are at their worst, we simply have to hold on to what we most deeply trust to be true. In the book Good to Great, there is a chapter titled, Confront the Brutal Facts, Yet Never Lose Faith. The chapter introduces the term the Stockdale Paradox, named for a man during the Vietnam War who was held at the Hanoi Hilton for 8 years. This is how Admiral Stockdale's conversation goes with the writer Jim Collins. "I never lost faith in the end of the story," Stockdale said when I asked him. "I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end, and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect I would not trade." I didn't say anything for many minutes, and we continued to walk toward the faculty club slowly, Stockdale limping and arc-swinging his stiff leg that had never fully recovered from repeated torture. Finally, after about 100 meters of silence, I asked, "Who didn't make it out?" "Oh, that's easy," he said. "The optimists." "The optimists? I don't understand," I said, now completely confused given what he had said just a few moments earlier. "The optimists, oh, they were the ones who said, 'We're going to be out by Christmas,' and Christmas would come and Christmas would go. Then they would say, 'We're going to be out by Easter,' and Easter would come and Easter would go, and then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again, and they died of a broken heart." Another long pause and more walking. Then he turned to me and said, "This is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." Hear those words again. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. This is what I would call hard-won hope, the hardest-won hope. The certainty that something can make sense regardless of how it turns out. The deep trust that you will somehow persevere even while staring down the harshest realities in front of you. And the gut-level acceptance that life goes on, even if not in the ways that you dreamed or hoped or planned. The trick is to ride the wave, to take your place in the flow of life, being at peace no matter what comes your way, because you have previously practiced being at peace. This Easter morning, let us celebrate the unfailing renewal of life and our place in the unfolding story of this season, that life goes on and we with it. In springtime's exuberance, with its riot of colors still to come, let us be on the lookout for all that is in bud, those tiny harbingers of hope that call us to wonder at all that is still to come alive in us, for we have wintered long enough. Amen.